Modern Vintage Radio.
Welcome to the Podcast Planner Show. This is all about podcasting with a content creation focus, because content matters when you're sharing your voice with the world. Nervous, throat dry. My body is stiffening up, red cheeks. It's winter, yet it feels like I've been instantly relocated to a desert. If you were to see me, you'd think, what's happening to that tomato-faced girl? And then maybe walk away because I'm sure it's an odd thing to witness. But here's the thing. It's a microphone, a script, headphones, a computer, and me. No one else. What I'm describing is what I was going through the first time I got on the microphone and attempted to record my first podcast episode. A large part of that anxiety, stage fright, was that I was 95% sure I didn't know how to deliver what I wanted to say. And it didn't sound remotely like radio. Well, that's what I had back then, right? To compare myself to. The other 5% was my ability to set up my equipment. But what good is my gear if what I had to say made no sense or straight up sucked? After this recording session, I started my journey of researching ways to help me lay out my ideas. This way, I can get on a microphone and record with confidence that it all made sense. And you know what? I found a method that has made all the difference. Now it's so easy for me to plan and record my episodes. As I speak, I'm using that very same method. In this episode, I will share a 3-step method you can easily use to plan and record your content. The exciting part is that you can use it in any form of content creation, audio, video, and written format. I started podcasting back in 2012 when there was no podcasting manual. Sure, there was 1 or 2 books on the topic, but with no actual templates or checklists. Fast forward to 2016, still no podcasting manual. Well, I decided to change that. I have packaged my 4 years of experience into the Podcast Planner. All editions include the Podcast Compass, recording templates, conversation triggers, and more to help you with your podcast. Get 2 free templates when you join the VIP email list, or grab the complete planner by visiting thepodcastplanner.com today. Let's continue with our intentional content series by getting into the first step of this method. And you know what's interesting? Content is hardly the issue. Organizing our message is. I say that because we already hold the content within us through our experience, curiosity, interviews, and stories. For the most part, what makes us nervous or overwhelmed with content creation is just not knowing how to organize all of this info that we have. Well, the first step to take is telling your listener what you're going to tell them. Does this sound familiar? In the last episode, episode 12, we went through a 4-question exercise, and the first one was, what are you going to tell your listener? It's no coincidence. That exercise was designed to easily plug in to this method for easy content creation. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I suggest you pause and come back after you've heard that episode. Okay, back to the first thing to do. Tell your listener what you're going to tell them. This means introduce the main topic and any supporting points that you have that are important. This intro should be a short and sweet summary that makes the listener think to themselves, ooh, I want to know more. You can easily use this method for your interview. Here's an example of how to do that. Introduce who you're about to interview, why you're excited to have them, the main topic for discussion, and any other important topics you're going to highlight with this interview. Okay, on to the second step of this method for creating content. Creating your content is similar to making a sandwich. You start with a slice of bread. In this case, you start with the intro. And now it's time to add your protein, condiments, and whatever else you have to have on your sandwich. This is the body of content. And sticking to this whole method that we're discussing on this episode, this body of content is coined as tell them. This is where you dive into the main topic, sharing more of your personal experience, your curiosity, the interview, or the story. Now, for interview formatted shows, this simply changes into questions that direct the conversation into topics you really want to cover. I suggest having 3 main questions. So far, we have tell them what you're going to tell them and tell them. What do you think is next? Well, it's Tell them what you told them. This part slightly echoes the introduction. What's different is that you're concluding your final thoughts about the topic or the interview. So reiterate your main topic and your supporting points. A great way to influence your listener is by provoking a final thought. Now, movies and TV shows do this all the time. It's called the reflective moment. It's a perfect way to conclude, or in our podcasting case, makes a perfect outro. So there you have the complete 3-step method for creating content. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. Now, I didn't come up with this. A wise old-timey guy named Aristotle did. His content can be very heavy and boring to read. So if you're interested in learning more about content delivery, 3 things. First, stay subscribed to this podcast. And second, I recommend grabbing Stand and Deliver, a book by Dale Carnegie. He goes into Aristotle's method, but in an easy way. And last but never least, the Podcast Planner. The recording templates inside the Podcast Planner were designed with this method in mind. The difference is that I've made it podcast specific and modernized it with today's ways of communicating your message effectively with your listener. A few last words on this whole tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them method. If done right, this format is not about repeating yourself. It just helps you break down what you know in a way that the audience clearly understands you and captivates them. Also, mix up the intro. You know the whole tell them what you're going to tell them? Instead of the here's what my topic is and the supporting points, start off with a story or a question, something to always capture the attention of your listener. On the next episode, I will share other important elements to add to your content that will enhance the experience and tap into the I want more factor. This episode was written and produced by Addie Saucedo. That's me. For more episodes, freebies, and information, please go to thepodcastplanner.com. If you like the show, please tell anyone that is interested in podcasting, or leave your honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts. You can follow me on social media. Just search Podcast Planner. This show follows a series format, not your normal weekly format. So be sure to subscribe to the show to make sure you get all of the episodes. Our supporters are Team Podcasts, Podcaster Society, Podbean, Spreaker, and Podfest. Thank you for listening to the Podcast Planner. Until next time, plan, record, and share your voice with the world. There are always 3 speeches for every one you actually give. The one you practiced, the one you gave, and the one you wish you gave. Dale Carnegie. Hey, I appreciate you sticking to the end and listening to my quotes or side messages. If you haven't grabbed your copy of the Podcast Planner, use this special code for 10% off. GOTIT. That's GOTIT for 10% off on any edition of the Podcast Planner. Thank you for sticking to the end.